So I just got a controversial take right now. I got an opinion that is probably going to upset some of you guys, but I'm genuinely trying to understand why this is the way it is. And I really hope that some of you will help me figure it out in the comment section. Because this has to do with movie critics. And I'm not talking about the fake movie critics, like whatever the journals are saying. No, I'm talking about the actual American people, the actual audience that goes to the movies. You see, there is this push right now for realism in movies. And the main reason which triggered me, and it's probably going to upset a lot of you guys unless you watch this video till the end, so you can get my point, is that I was watching The Mandalorian, and then I wanted to see what the EFAP crew has to say about it, and they were nitpicking everything. Everything was nitpicked. Everything. Like, any sort of thing that was just there to add drama to the TV show was trying to be deconstructed in order to add realism to it. Like, there was this fight scene, and the people from EFAP was like, oh, why is this guy coming from behind and punching Mando in the head? Does he not see that he has a helmet? Why are they not aiming for the gaps in his armor? Did they not study medieval combat? Do they not have Google? Did they not know the gaps in the Mandalorian armor? Why did this guy survive a rocket from Mando? Do they not know that rockets are very dangerous to the human body? So I'm not just talking about a movie being self-consistent. Like, if it says that zombies can't run, then you expect the zombies not to be able to run throughout the entirety of the movie unless it's explained. No, I'm talking about the removal of anything that doesn't make logical sense from a movie. So I think I have one of the most extreme examples. I think I have like something that everyone is going to roll their eyes when they see it. And it's got to do with the trailer from the new... Well, actually, I'm not even going to name the movie, right? Because then it might influence your decision. So the idea is that this car is going through the jungle, right? And it's being chased. And there's a helicopter that's shooting fire at it. And it's like dodging the missiles and whatever. And then you get to see like the weirdest thing ever. The car goes towards a broken bridge, rams itself into the pillar, and you get like the rope wrapping around the car. And then the car flies around the mountain, pretty much like Tarzan on a rope, slams itself into the cliff, rolls a couple of times, and then the actors are safe, right? Now, if you see something like this, I think it would give Mahler an aneurysm. You know, like, I think Rags would feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about it. And I'm just naming them because they're the most popular reviewers on the internet. It's not that I have something with them or against them. In fact, I like the show, but it's just it's something that I noticed, right? So I think like everyone here would agree that this scene is bad. Okay, like almost all of the people in the chat right now, they're agreeing that, yeah, this is an eye-rolling scene. This is something horrible. You shouldn't do this in a movie. But what if it was an anime? I mean, there's animes where you get to see more ridiculous stuff than this. No one asks about the physics of Spider-Man, which is a cartoon. Like, no one asks, like, how does his webs work? I mean, you know, he goes between buildings, like in the Spider-Man game or whatever, and you go between buildings. There's nothing above you. But for some reason, like, Spider-Man clings to something invisible in the sky and does his web swing motion. And no one points that out. Like, no one is like, oh, well, the physics, right? Like, what I'm trying to say, why is it okay in cartoons? Like, why is it the same story, like, literally the same story could work in a Devil May Cry game, but it's not going to work in one of these action-packed movies? Which, by the way, like, this movie that I'm showing you, like, it's probably bad, but it's bad for other reasons. But, like, this scene in particular shouldn't make the movie good or bad. This scene by itself, again, if you put it in an anime, and let's say it's a realistic anime, like one that's trying to actually, you know, be without Goku and Vegeta and like ki blasts and stuff. It's like, no, just an action-packed anime. This scene would probably make people smile rather than cringe. And this is what I'm trying to understand. Like, this is what I don't get. Like, why is it that just like the different medium makes it better? Now, here's something else that I noticed. if you apply this logic to the extreme, and I have seen it applied to the extreme in some movies, again by critics on the internet, then you wouldn't be able to have a masterpiece like Indiana Jones. The classic scene where he like removes the treasure from the pedestal and then tries to replace it with something else so that the weight remains the same, that would make absolutely no sense. Like, firstly, a civilization of people that lived in the Amazon would never have the technology to create something like that throughout human history. But even then, like, let's say there is one, how would that technology manage to resist thousands of years? Like, why wouldn't any of the ropes that create the intricate device not rot during the thousands of years? Why wouldn't any of the metal components or the wood components degrade over time? Why is it that when he picks it up, you get the entire room shaking and then a boulder comes out? Like, why a boulder of all things? What's the point? Like, why would you make a trap that people can just run away from? So, you know, like, if you were to add that level of realism and expectations, like you want the movie to be as realistic as possible, what you end up doing is that you're removing the drama from it. Because there are a couple of scenes, and again, like, ignore the one with the car, because that's just the most extreme example that I showed just to make a point. But, like, there are a lot of scenes in movies that are supposed to add drama that wouldn't happen in real life precisely because they add drama. So, if you look at an interview with a famous critic, he says, "We know that in the history of all arts, the arrival of perfect realism coincided with perfect decadence. Why is it that when technique is primitive, everything is beautiful, and when technique is perfected, almost everything is ugly? Technical perfection can only create boredom, because it only reproduces nature. Why the hell would we want to go to a movie when we can have the real thing? So imitating nature can only lead to the death of an art form." And this is what really changed my mind about way too much realism in a movie. And I guess, like, I always disagreed with it, because if you look at the costume of Power Girl, which has like a boob window, like her character arc is that she doesn't really have an identity. So unlike Superman, like, she leaves that as a hole, on her chest until she can figure out what she's going to put there. But you get like the social justice activists going, "Oh, well, you do realize that when she flies around, there's going to be insects that are going in her tits. Like, there's going to be birds that are going to die in her cleavage." And I'm like, dude, like, why do you bring this level of realism into it? I mean, it's just the coolness factor. It's a little bit of titillation. It's not going to kill anyone. Okay, she's not a real woman. No one is objectifying her. Like, why do you want this level of realism into it? And then honestly, like, if you're going to make something that would be actually realistic, let's say you make a realistic World War movie, it would be the most boring movie ever, because for 95% of the movie, the main character would be stuck in the trenches doing guard duty, being bored to high heavens, and then by the end, he goes over to no man's land and he gets killed in an artillery strike that you don't even know where it came from. And that would be a realistic world movie. Like, if you read stories, like actual historical accounts from World War I, you would see that the biggest issue that officers have to deal with wasn't low morale, wasn't battle fatigue, it was boredom. Like, you would have soldiers that would steal the officer's jeep and drive it around and then ram it in a tree. And this would cause more insubordination in the trenches, because people were bored to high heaven. Like, if you remove the drama from it, the actual acts of terror and the horrors of battle, those don't take that much. Those can take like a couple of days at best. But like, even then, like, most of the time, the soldiers are just sitting in the trenches hoping that the bomb doesn't fall on top of them. So you wouldn't manage to make a great story with it. Like, you need to have the coolness factor. And that's, going back to the Indiana Jones, it's like why a new Indiana Jones wouldn't be able to be made today, even if you wouldn't have, like, the ideology of the woke or whatever. It's simply because, like, people would tear it apart. Like, people would nitpick at every little single detail. People would complain and eye roll at every little thing, like they did with the fridge and the nuke. And in my opinion, yes, the fridge and the nuke deserves all the criticism because it's absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, so too does the boulder scene. Like the boulder scene also makes they both don't make no sense. Now you can say, well, yeah, this makes less sense than the other one. Okay, fine. Like what is then the correct level of sense making that should be done? Because a guy going into a forgotten jungle, finding some lost temple in there, built by the greatest engineers mankind has ever seen, using just wood and vines, and then when he activates a trap that makes no logical sense, he manages to escape. Right? I mean, that makes no sense to me. But you know what? Like, I don't care because it's dramatic. Like, if it adds drama, it's cool. Now, I want to make sure that people don't misunderstand me, all right? Because the main problem that I think is with movies today isn't that the movies necessarily don't make sense, right? Like, my problem with movies is that they're ideological. Like, you roll your eyes, you can't escape the ideology that you see on television every day. Like, for example, in The Predator, let's add global warming as the main talking point in the fucking Predator, of all things. It's like, yeah, you know, like, why the Predators are coming to Earth? Because there's global warming soon and they're going to kill mankind and then the Predators can take over the planet. Like, that's the actual plot of the movie. Let's add autism as a superpower. Let's add some critical theory into it, neurodiversity. You know, just because people have autism doesn't mean that, it's more difficult for them to integrate in society. No, they're like superhumans. It's such a desirable trait that an alien from another planet, the Predator, is coming on Earth specifically to steal the autism gene. I'm not kidding, like, that's actually in the plot. So I don't think, like, the problem with the Predator is necessarily the lack of realism, that it's unrealistic for, like, a little kid to outsmart the alien or whatever. Like, no. I mean, the main problem, if you think about it, the core reason has got to do with the fact that all of the characters are boring. Like, none of the characters there are relatable. None of the characters there are interesting. And what's worse is that the story itself is just so filled and pumped with ideology that it doesn't make sense, because what they prioritized when making the story was the ideology rather than the story to be entertaining. So what I mean by this is, like, you can have an action movie that's over the top and ridiculous, and it can actually be good. Just think about all of the 90s movies that we saw, you know, where the hero does never reload his gun, where the hero manages to take down an helicopter with an explosive arrow, where the hero gets shot at from multiple corners, but he manages not to get hit even once. Right? Like, you can do those types of movies, and they would probably entertain a specific audience. Like, they would probably not entertain a 65-year-old woman. They would probably not entertain a grown-ass man. But they would most likely entertain a bunch of teenagers that just want to see stuff blown up on the screen. But what those movies had, and today's movies don't have, are relatable characters. The characters in those movies were badass. The characters in those movies were action icons, like you would want to be like them. Yeah, they were really entertaining. And if you say that, oh no, V, that can't be done, you're stupid, you're wrong. Well, what about Devil May Cry? Like, Devil May Cry has a lot of just eye-rolling thing. And again, like, Devil May Cry is an extreme. It's not supposed to be the perfect example. But there are a lot of other characters like Devil May Cry which get to do a lot of crazy stuff. And usually, because that happens in anime or cartoons, like, people are just fine with it. People just say, oh, well, you know, like, they don't even question it. But if you take that anime and you make it into a movie, all of a sudden people flip their stuff. So that's why I don't get, that's what I don't understand. It's like, do you honestly think that these scenes that are over the top, but they're just there in order to add coolness factor, to add some drama to the movie, do you think they're inherently wrong? Do you think they're inherently bad? And that is the question that I genuinely want to know in the comment section, right? So that's the first question. And the second, why is it that a scene that's inherently bad, like the one that I showed with the car, why is it bad in a movie, but it would be perfectly acceptable in an anime that's not trying to be an action-packed anime? Like, if you were to see the exact same scene in Uzaki Wants to Hang Out, for example, right? Like, he's doing the exact same thing with the car, and it manages to just spin it around the mountain. Would you genuinely think that it's a bad anime because it had that scene in it? Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.